Hey, we're here, everybody, on YouTube again. Welcome into Hafen Bro Knows S tonight. But we got a Corey with us, and we
Howdy.
wanted to kind of get going here on what's happening. The saga continues. The saga always continues, Corey. I don't know why, but we don't even know why it's happening in the first place.
Nope.
But a lot of things unfolded, and a lot of speculation, a lot of conjecture out there about Aaron Rodgers and what's happening, and what's basically what the Packers have said and done, what Aaron Rodgers has said and done. We don't know. We know a few things, and there was interesting conversation I think earlier today, which was the key to me was what AJ Hawk had to say because he was hanging out with him this weekend, and so he did say some things. He didn't say too many specifics, but he said a couple. He debunked a couple of the wildest things that are out there. It was like that's total BS. That's garbage. That has no validity whatsoever. So those are a couple of key points to talk about. And then, I want to get some feedback from you. You said you had some scenario that you believed, and I couldn't remember what that was all about. And then I was also just kind of curious about what different people that are Packers fans think about the situation and how they're viewing it from the Packers side and Aaron Rodgers side, and wanted your thoughts on that too, because I know you're maybe see things a little bit differently than I do. So here, let's talk about AJ Hawk quick. Now, you said you didn't hear the comments yet. I'll fill you in on what happened. So, AJ Hawk made his appearance on the Pat McAfee show today. They were like, hey, we got to ask him all this stuff. And he said it was okay. So we're going to ask him questions. So they did. One of the questions, or one of the things that he said specifically was that and he's like, I'm not speaking for Aaron, but based on the feeling I got from him, and he's like, we talked about stuff for sure. It wasn't just like we didn't ignore what was going on in the world. But he said the chances of him retiring, no chance. So he doesn't think retirement for Rodgers in the situation to get out of it is remotely possible. Like that's not even going to happen. Because that's one way to resolve that's one possible resolution to the whole situation. So retirement, no. And then the other thing AJ Hawk said was completely BS in terms of what's some of the stuff that's been put out is this whole thing that's been spun that Rodgers is demanding that Goody is fired. He'll return if Goody goes, and he's like, no, that's total crap too. So those two things were confirmed by personal friend AJ Hawk, a guy who actually talked to him, saw him this weekend, and then said those things today.
Yeah, I mean, I think of those two scenarios, the retirement was probably the one that was most likely to happen. Like that would have been one that I could have seen Aaron Rodgers doing. It's just I'm going to go out on my own terms now. I don't like what's going on. I'm going to wait the time. I'll retire and then I'll come back and play for another team. It's not like players haven't come out of retirement before. Would have been his way of really kind of sticking it to the Packers as well. Fine, I'll give you back $30 million or whatever it is he's going to have to give back. But then I get to go to the team I want after I have to wait my allotted time of retirement. And that way the Packers get nothing except for money. So that one I could have seen happening, to be honest. The Goody one, that's a little outlandish. I mean, that really seems pretty petty, to be honest. We don't is known for holding grudges. I think that's just very obvious in his mannerisms and whatnot. That is taking it to the extreme. I think he's such a smart player and smart person in general that he knows that would have just ended badly for him if that would have been the case. So that's a pretty outlandish thing. And it's nice to see someone who is actually a very close personal friend of Aaron Rodgers kind of speaking out. Because, yeah, like you said, there's no way that they could have went to the Derby and not talked about any of them to have come up. I mean, there was no way that they were just going to completely ignore the fact unless all of them were in on it and they were just BSing everybody.
Yeah, I think what was interesting, about those two things are that I mean, the one a bunch of people ran with is that Rodgers calculated this whole thing. He put this, he's sticking it the whole thing exactly to stick it to the Packers. and the timing of it and all of it was calculated, and he's demanding all these things. So the one that, there's so many Rodgers hater loudmouth guys out there, and the one thing that they ran with the most was that they believe that part, that this, Rodgers is demanding what, him or the GM. And I'm like, come on. I mean, that's just not his style. And on top of it, I mean, it's like I said before on this program, but other times too, to other people, is a guy that's gone through everything he's gone through in Green Bay, and the whole time he's been there, and he's also said multiple times that his legacy matters to him. So why would he all of a sudden do something this which would make him just look terrible, right? It's an out for the Packers where they look fine and he looks like the bad guy. Like, how in the hell would he put himself in that situation to get that upset about it, that he's going to make a move like that? That makes no sense. But some people like to run with it and believe it. So, whatever. And it was good that AJ Hawk kind of just put those two things to bed. There wasn't a lot else that he could say. He did say, they asked him if he thought the situation could be resolved. And he said, I'm not sure. He said, I never say never on anything, but it's a pretty big issue.
Yeah, no, there's no doubt that it's a big issue. And there is a way to resolve it. There's a couple of ways to resolve it, both of which come at a very high price to the Packers. It's essentially what it comes down to. Aaron Rodgers doesn't lose anything on it. This is all on the Packers to fix, regardless of who leaked whatever information it is. So a couple of things from my perspective on all of this. And I know you think I'm some big Aaron Rodgers hater. I am not a big Aaron Rodgers hater. But yeah, I do take a little bit of a different perspective. I think my perspective is a little bit more from the Packers side of things than it is Aaron Rodgers. But basically, here's the facts that we know about Aaron Rodgers. First ballot Hall of Famer, no doubt. Like, if there's anybody that does not vote for him, they're an idiot. That's essentially, he should be unanimous in. Top 10 QB of all time. He's in that argument, top 5 QB of all time. In my opinion, he's one of the top 5 athletic QBs of all time. And you can even possibly put him in the conversation for top 3. I mean, depending on where, obviously Vic is going to be number 1, and then kind of where you rank Elway, Cunningham, and Steve Young in that conversation. Somewhere in that conversation, Aaron Rodgers is going to be there, just in his pure athleticism of it. But the thing that really is the sticking point for all of this issue that's come out is the Packers' commitment to Aaron Rodgers in the future. Aaron Rodgers right now, he doesn't have that commitment from the Packers. It's all about the almighty dollar. It's all about the Benjamins. That's really what it comes down to, is the money aspect of things. So you talking about legacy and him making those little moves to tarnish his legacy. I think for Rodgers, part of his legacy is, how much money am I making? And I really think that's a huge, huge part of it. He's the deal that Patrick Mahomes got. 10 years, $450 million. They're at the end of this guy's contract, if they play it out and let it go through, which I can't see the Chiefs doing, because by the end of the contract, he'll be the $52 million cap hit. He'll have made $500 million off of the Chiefs. But I went through and I kind of pulled some numbers because I wanted to be prepared a little bit for this. So just kind of putting some of this stuff around. So Mahomes had a 10-year, $450 million contract. 141 and a half of it total is guaranteed, which comes out to be about 31.5% of the entire contract is guaranteed, about $45 million a year. Aaron Rodgers, 4 years, $134 million. Now, this is the most recent contract, obviously, with just under $99 million guaranteed, which comes out to just under 74% of his contract is completely guaranteed. It's guaranteed money, 74% of it. And the average is, still $33.5 million a year. But he's looking at that as I'm still making 12 and a half or 11 and a half million dollars a year less than what Patrick Mahomes is. But if you look at the commitment that the Packers have given him, it's significantly more than the commitment that the Chiefs gave Patrick Mahomes. If you just look at the guaranteed money, I mean, we're talking 42% more of a guaranteed contract. So, and to put it into perspective for other players, Russell Wilson, 4-year, $140 million contract, $107 million guaranteed. 76% of that contract is guaranteed, and he's making 35 mil on average a year. So he's comparable with Russell Wilson. Arguably, Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than what Russell Wilson is. He should be making more than what Russell Wilson does. But here's some other stuff that I found interesting too, because there's always the GOAT conversation about Brady and Rodgers. Which one of them is the GOAT? Brady is the GOAT. I'm just going to say it right now. Rodgers cannot pass Brady as the GOAT. There's just no way. But why is it that Tom Brady, who's made career earnings of $263.5 million in 21 seasons, and Aaron Rodgers has made $241 million roughly in 16 seasons. If Aaron Rodgers has made that much money in just 5 less seasons, I mean, he's really looking at what, $22.5 million less? That's essentially 1 year of pay for a quarterback nowadays. Why is there such a discrepancy if these guys are so good in the conversation of GOAT? It really comes down to what the other contracts have been. Brady, his biggest contract was, he's had 2 that can be considered big. His most recent one, which is a 2-year, $50 million contract, completely guaranteed, 100% guaranteed, but it's only $25 million a year. His one was back in 2010, a 4-year, $72 million contract, $18 million a year with, 29 and a quarter guaranteed. That's it. Tom Brady is not breaking the bank. He wants to win championships. Aaron Rodgers wants to get paid like he's winning championships, but he's not. And I think that's a big difference there. Brady was able to, and the Patriots were able to surround Brady with talent to be able to win because he wasn't breaking the bank. He wasn't asking more than what he's valued at. They could surround him with those playmakers, the guys, the role players, and really allow the team to flourish and win a championship. Aaron Rodgers wants to get paid, and he wants to get paid like he's the man, because he is the man. Let me be honest. He's the best quarterback in football right now. And the MVP trophy he has shows it. But he wants to get paid like it. Packers can't afford to pay him like that if they want to win championships. So I think that's the biggest stickler, is the money aspect of things.
Let me respond to a couple things in there and just kind of just say a few things of note. It's interesting that you think this is more about money, or at least substantially about money, because there have been some reports saying really it was just about guaranteeing for 2-3 more years past 2021 is what Roger was looking for in the restructuring. The Packers didn't want to do that. They were looking at restructuring, but didn't want to really give him any more guarantees past 2021, past this upcoming season. And, I think that's a big part of it too. And that just goes back on based on stuff he said, like how it meant something to him to finish his career with the Packers, all that sort of stuff that he's talked about, wanting to stay in Green Bay, wanting to be a Packer, tell the Packers he wanted to play till he was at least 40, and then wanting to have that commitment from the team that would happen, and they didn't want to give him that commitment because he understands anybody can be cut at any time or moved on from at any time. And right now, the financials were giving the Packers an out easily. Well, I guess after June 1 of this year, they have an out, right? The thing about the Patriots, though, okay, that since you brought it up, is yes, Tom Brady's salary was less, but he also was really good friends with the owner. And he also knew that the owner and the franchise would go and push the cap and spend money to acquire players and talented players and free agents. And they would also take on guys that other teams wouldn't take on for character issues or whatever because they were good players, right? The Packers, one, don't want any problem guys and never take chances on any guys that have any issues, regardless of how talented they are. And up until this year and last year, and when they finally spent, all this money in free agency signing those four guys in one off season, I mean, every single year they were below the cap. They were significantly below the cap. They wouldn't spend money. So yes, you can say that yes, the team isn't getting there because Aaron Rodgers had such a big contract, but he also knew that the team wasn't going to spend the money if he let him have it anyway, because they wouldn't do it. They just were like, we're gonna, cheap out on this and be conservative here and not go after these guys. And that was their track record. That's what they showed to him, for 10, 12 years. And if that's what they showed you, I mean, from his perspective, then I would think, well, why do I need to save and give them a discount if they're not going to use the money to help us build a better team? So
Yeah, and I think that's a fair point. I think part of it too, though, and I know you're not going to like it, but Colin Coward made a good point in the video that I shared with you earlier. I don't know if you got a chance to read it or watch it or not.
I did, yeah.
But he had a good point in there that the Packers historically are a conservative financial team. They don't make the big signings. And a lot of that is due to the structure of the team. There is no owner. If an owner goes out and makes a mistake, and them signing somebody doesn't pan out, who does the owner report to? The owner reports to himself.
Right.
Fire himself. What is Robert going to do? He says, I'm going to step down because I made an idiot decision. Robert Kraft's not going to do that. He's just going to go down to Florida and get massages is what he's going to do. But who does Mark Murphy have to report to? He has to report to the board because it is a publicly owned team. So they have to be more cautious. They can't really go out and make those brash and risky decisions and say, hey, we are going to go all in, because they know if it does not pan out and it destroys the team for the next 4 or 5 years, you're going to be out of a job. So they have to take the conservative approach regardless of how good their quarterback is. That's really part of why I think why the Packers have done what they've done. I mean, you can say how Goody is drafted and if it was the right decisions to take Jordan Love or not. Whether that was just them seeing an opportunity to get somebody ready for when it was time to move on for Aaron or from Aaron. If they were, maybe they're going to use him as a Jimmy G kind of deal, try to build him up, show his skills just a little bit. And then their commitment to Aaron was, we're going to trade Jordan now because we don't need him because you're still here for the next 3 or 4 years. And I think to your point, I mean, there is definitely something there that about the commitment to Aaron about, the next 2 to 3 years, whether it's a guarantee for the next 2 to 3 years or just showing him whatever that commitment is going to be. We don't know how long Aaron Rodgers is going to play. I mean, he said he wants to play until he's at least 40. At the rate he's going, I mean, maybe he can play till 45. I don't think so, because he can be injury prone. And I think that's part of the reason why the Packers have done what they've done. That's why they drafted Jordan Love, because they need a guy who can step in case Aaron goes down. If Aaron goes down with another collarbone issue, who are they going to put in there? Tim Boyle? Tim Boyle can't lead the Packers.
Yeah, my dad would say he could. Dad would say it. Now, Corey, now I have to put this out there because I know you're, I know partly you're playing the company line here because you applied for one of those 4 job openings that Indeed told me about. With
Weren't
the Green Bay
supposed to
Packers.
tell anybody that.
Yeah, so you got to be careful. I get it. But no, it's a fair point. I mean, look, I mean, seriously, I think they hopefully learned a couple lessons between, when Scott Tolzien and Seneca Wallace were their backup quarterbacks, and he went down the one year, and we were just like, what is this stuff? And if they hadn't been able to, reclaim Matt Flynn somehow and pick him up off the street and at least settle the ship for a little while, like he wasn't great, but he was good enough. And then follow that up with the Brett Hundley thing. I mean, come on, you need to have a good backup quarterback, right? You just do. The look. The other thing about the whole situation, and I just don't think it's about. I don't think mostly it's not about him wanting more money. I just think he wants more of the financial commitment, so it puts the onus on the team that it's not easy for them to be like, now we're going to cut ties with you after 1 year. See you later. That's what he wanted. He just didn't want to be let loose after this season when all those other things are on the line for him. And on top of that, I think he meant it when he said he really wanted to stay in Green Bay. He wanted to play his whole career in Green Bay. That meant a lot to him. And he said, look, a lot of guys don't get to end their career where they started. A lot of guys don't get that choice. He's like, I'd love to have that opportunity. And if I play well enough, I believe I can, right? So prove it. Like, hey, if I'm the best quarterback, regardless of who you bring in, I should still be your quarterback, I would think, right? But, for so many people, and this is where the conversation has gotten so nutty, is so many people went crazy thinking that this whole issue stems from the drafting of Jordan Love. And it doesn't. I mean, this is way beyond that, way before that. There were things that had happened, right? There were decisions the team made. There were opportunities where Rodgers went to give input and they just like blew him off, or were like, where he was told, you play quarterback, your job is quarterback, we handle the decisions, right? And so it's built up over time. It's not that, because like some people have said, and I don't know if you got to read Terry Bradshaw's spouting off on multiple media interviews, I think today, or over the weekend or whatever, where he's just like hammering on them. And Terry Bradshaw, look, I'll just say this about him. He hammered on Rodgers from the start, and it was because he loved Favre. And when the team moved on to Rodgers from Favre, he was all over it when the team didn't have a good first year and the record was bad. He was hammering Rodgers. And even when Rodgers was at the peak of his greatness, Terry Bradshaw, on every Sunday morning talking about him, reluctantly gave him credit. It looked like he was in pain when he was complimenting Aaron Rodgers if you looked at his face. So Terry Bradshaw is a hater of Rodgers too. So of course he jumps on this opportunity, and he's just hammering him, slamming him, calling him weak, calling him as dumb as a box of rocks. A guy, okay, look at the source. Anyway, the point is here that there's all these people slamming him because they're thinking about it's all off of drafting Jordan Love, and it's not. I mean, Aaron Rodgers knows he's way better at quarterback than Jordan Love. He knows he could beat out Jordan Love this year and next year and probably the year after that if it was a, competition. But he also knows it's a business, and he also knows at some point the team has to move on. But the bigger things that have caused the rift are all these other decisions that were made that he really felt as a partner with the team, because that was a quote he had when he signed his last contract. I don't know. I watched Tom Grassi's video, and I'll give him credit on that because he pulled it up. And he said that Rodgers, in the signing of his last contract, said, it was quoted in there, signing this, it's a partnership, and it works that way. And so, just put yourself in his position for a minute. Okay, you've been an employee at this organization for a very long time. You're an important employee, really crucial to the success of the organization. And you're moving forward. You signed, committed on to stay on for quite a while longer, and you're moving forward with this team. And then, something about football and being successful, right? And you kind of know about what might be helpful, and you want to give some input on certain players, like a lot of players do. and they're just blowing you off, or telling, even more than blowing you off. They're not even listening to you, and then not doing anything with your suggestions. They're telling you, hey, you play quarterback. You play quarterback. We handled the decisions. So there's that. Then publicly, he talks up some guys that he thinks are important guys, and then they're cut, or then the team gets rid of them. Jordy was one of his guys. Randall Cobb, one of his guys. And I get you got to move on from players. Totally understand. Totally understand. Yep. But those are guys he relied on, he could count on. And then what did you bring in after that to replace those guys? A bunch of young receivers, Jimmy Graham. I mean, not really the same level of trust that you could have in those dudes. And then on top of it, the other one that somebody brought up was the Jake Kummerow one, which Eckes, I'm really sorry. You should be even more mad at the Packers now, because Rodgers publicly hit the pulpit for Jake Kummerow and was like, yes, this is one of the guys. I really look forward to playing with him. And then the day or two later, he was cut from the team. And Rodgers looked at him, a guy he'd worked with for a couple of years, felt good about, felt he could trust, was looking at going to him as a number 3 receiver in that offense that season. And then, no, we're getting rid of him. See you later. So that's why I say, like, the people that are just so focused, and the narrative's been so much about, oh, you draft a quarterback, then he gets mad and petty and whines, and then blah, blah, blah. Just be awesome and beat out that quarterback. That's not what this is all about. Like, obviously drafting Jordan Love didn't help, and that added to the situation. But all these other things happened in the last 3 or 4 years too.
Wait, would it have been, had the Packers just gone to Rodgers and been like, look, we are going to take a quarterback. We need to start planning for the future. That's that. Would that then have been, would this Jordan Love thing been a non-issue for him then? If they just simply said, we're preparing for the future, we're taking a quarterback, you're still our quarterback for the season, but we need to start preparing for the future. Would it still have been an issue for him, or is it just simply because it caught him off guard that they went with a QB?
I think it caught him off guard, but I think he dealt with it. I think that's why it took him so long before he spoke publicly about it. And I thought when he spoke publicly about it, he was honest, but at the same time was very, looked inwardly about, okay, what can I control? I'm going to be awesome. And, then they'll have to figure out what they're going to do. Right. I don't think it was necessarily that's as big of an issue as not being honest with him. Right. Because I brought this up before. Like, okay, if you went to him and said, hey, we're drafting this guy, or even, if you didn't tell him you're going to draft him, but he's on the team and you talk to him, right? Because I'm sure he went to talk to him. And he wants to know, what's the plan here, right? And this is the thing that we've been talking about for a while in our shows, is what is the plan with the Packers? Like, what they do one thing and then they do the opposite, or they say one thing and then they do something that's completely contradictory. And you're like, what's the plan here? Are we playing for now? Are we winning now? Are we building for the future? What are we doing? What are we doing, Packers? And anyway, I'm so, and publicly they did the same thing. So I'm sure they probably said the same thing. He goes to Gutekunst, he goes to Murphy, and they're like, oh, you're our guy, you're our quarterback. We look forward to playing with you and winning, competing for championships with you. They've said that multiple times in the media the last couple of years. We look forward to competing for championships with Aaron as our quarterback for a long time, and all this stuff. Yet his contract says, after this year, very easy to just get you out of here. And you drafted the quarterback early. So the things they did not match with the things they said. And if all right, in the media, your presentation, whatever, but straight up, one-on-one, you go in and talk to your bosses, right, about the situation. They say that to your face, and then you want to restructure your contract. And they come to you and want to restructure because they're cap issues. And you say, okay, but I want to ensure that there's some more money guaranteed to me in 2022, 2023, so I can be on this team until I'm 40. And they say, we'll do some restructuring, but let's keep it all this year, 2021, for the big money, and we'll, not going to put any more years on that contract. I mean, that's what I think a lot of it where the boiling point and the tipping point here has really come from is that he went to them to talk about it. They told him this stuff, did things opposite of what they were telling him, what they were saying publicly. And at that point, how can you trust them?
No, I don't think either side has handled it well, to be honest.
Oh, sure, of course.
Both of them are at fault. I mean, it's it's a bigger D contest is essentially what it is. Who's got the biggest D? But when Rodgers signed his latest deal, was Gutekunst the GM?
Yes, that was Goody's first big move as GM. Yep.
Okay. So then, yeah, I was going to say, if it was before Gutekunst and Aaron Rodgers saying, I want to be a partner with this team, that partnership was with Ted Thompson then. It wasn't necessarily with Gutekunst. But if Gutekunst signed it, because he's the one who controls all of the player personnel, looking at I forget who I was watching that was talking about the org structure, and it might have been Coward. I don't remember. But you have Mark Murphy at top, and then it's Gutekunst who controls all of the player personnel decisions, and then Matt LaFleur on the same level, who just coaches the team. And usually it's the head coach reports up to the GM and the GM up to the owner or whatnot. No, they both report up to Mark Murphy. So Mark Murphy arguably is the bigger idiot here because he's made that restructuring and doesn't know what the hell he's doing. I don't know that Mark Murphy's a football guy.
And you know what? So that's an interesting point. You bring up that structure because Mark Murphy is kind of the emotional guy. Like Gutekunst to me, I can't trust what he says. I don't know. I don't know what's going on in there. I just know he seems like he's playing it cool all the time. So maybe he really is that level-headed and whatever. But we know Mark Murphy's got he's a bit of a hothead. He'll make decisions when he's mad. And of course, most of us understand that making a decision when you're mad is not usually a good decision. It's not a good time to make any decision. But I mean, he's the one that in 2018, after they lost the home game to the Cardinals and there were a handful of games left in the season, and they knew Joe Philbin wasn't going to be a coach they were going to consider for the next year. But that was it. He reports of him storming out of the box and flipping out because they lost to a terrible team at home. And, McCarthy's out of here. And, was that the right decision? Probably not. Let the dude finish the season. He was your coach for 13 years. Like, come on. And on top of that, what else are you going to do in the next couple games? You're not making the playoffs. You don't have a coach in the building that you can really trial out here that you're going to go with. So just let and if you took a little while to calm down before you make the decision, you'd probably realize that. But Murphy was the one that made that call. So maybe he's the guy. Maybe he's the guy that needs more heat. Everybody's on heat on Gutekunst, heat on Rodgers, and maybe Murphy's the biggest problem. I don't know, but seems like he needs more heat too because I don't think he's getting enough.
And really looking at this whole situation, who's the biggest loser of all of this? It's Matt LaFleur.
Yeah.
He controls nothing of this conversation. He doesn't know who his starting quarterback's going to be, and he has no say in who it's going to be until Gutekunst figures this out with Rodgers. So he's just kind of sitting there like, do I continue working with Aaron Rodgers or do I start prepping Jordan Love? I think because they got to start making those decisions now. I mean, training camp starts in like a month and a half, roughly.
Yeah.
I mean, they got to start those decisions. He's got to start coming up with game plans and figuring all that out. He can't do that if he doesn't know who his starting quarterback's going to be. So he's up shit creek without a paddle right now.
Not to mention they only have one quarterback on the roster currently, which is, other than Rodgers, they only got him and Love are the only quarterbacks on the roster. So get some more quarterbacks in here. Holy crap!
Yeah,
another quarterback.
Need to do something.
Red Rocket is he? Oh yeah, maybe not, but
who knows? But it's a terrible situation for both Rodgers and the team. They've both handled it poorly. Regardless of wherever the communication breakdown was. Who knows? Maybe it was one of those four people that now have there's openings for at the Green Bay Packers. Maybe one of them leaked it.
It's possible.
I don't know. But your point about, do you go for it now or do you build for the future? And the Packers have always been build for the future. They've never gone for it now.
Yeah.
I think even when you look at the Super Bowl that the Packers won with Favre, like they made it to that NFC Championship the year before, and everybody's like, "What do you mean the Packers made it to the NFC Championship? They're actually that good?" And then it was the next year that like everything clicked, and it was like, "Oh yeah, they're actually a pretty damn good team, and they had the number one defense in the league." And then they ended up winning a Super Bowl, but they couldn't repeat it. They're like a one and done kind of deal. You got your one shot winning it, and then we have to start the slow decline and rebuild for the next time we win. So in another, I don't know, what is it now? 12 years, we'll win another Super Bowl. That's kind of the trend that we got going on now.
Right. I mean, they never totally tank out, for very long. I mean, that's the thing. And so that's one thing that's been important. And we've talked about that, the sustained success and hope and competition and keeping the fan base, not to the point where they're getting disinterested or frustrated. I mean, I remember the 80s Packers and how bad they were. I don't know how much you're a little younger, so you may not quite remember some of that, but
yeah, I got
really
like
bad.
the tail end of Mikowski, and then everything after that is, I mean, I've known Favre and Rodgers for the good portion of everything.
Yeah.
But I hate to say it, but I think it's time that the Packers start to do that again, because they have to. They're at a point now where, yes, Rodgers is still one of the best quarterbacks in the game, if not the best. I think I said before he was the best.
Yeah,
But
I've got you on that.
You got me on recorded saying that.
Yeah.
They can't build a team around him effectively and pay him as the best if they want to win championships. Their cap situation doesn't allow it. They don't have the right people. I think they paid big money to some of the wrong players.
I agree.
That was Gutekunst. That was his effort of, this is our all-in moment when he signed the Smiths and Adrian Amos. He's like, this is our way of shoring up the defense. We have enough on offense. We're going to get after it now. We're going to win the Super Bowl. And it didn't work. He bet on the wrong horse, to have a derby term from yesterday or the weekend. So, I mean, he bet on the wrong players is essentially what it comes down to. He didn't get the right ones. But now it's time, okay, we made the mistake. We need to get rid of the problems. Hang on to Rodgers if you can, and still field a team that can compete, which, let's be realistic. You have Aaron Rodgers, you're guaranteed at least 8 wins. And him alone is about 8 wins for a team. And if you can factor in Aaron Jones and Tunyon and the defense, you got about another 3 or 4 right there. That should be enough to get you to the playoffs every year. 12 wins. That should get you to the playoffs and keep you in the conversation every year. But at what point do you say, okay, enough is enough? We need to, instead of having a great quarterback with an okay-ish team around him, do we just have a good quarterback, one who can manage the game and have a great team around him? Because that's essentially what happened when the Packers won their 2 Super Bowls. Brett Favre and Aaron Rodgers were relatively cheap. I mean, I think when Aaron Rodgers won his Super Bowl, it was like $6.5 million. That's all he got paid that year. Mm-hmm. Great team around him. I mean, there were great players around him. Jordy was in his prime. Greg Jennings. You still had Driver, Charles Woodson on that defense. Clay Matthews, B.J. Raji. They were all in their prime. They were great players at that time. And Aaron Rodgers wasn't quite great. He was really good, but he wasn't quite great. After that Super Bowl, Aaron Rodgers became great. Now they just can't field a great team around a great player. It's hard to do that. The exception, Tom Brady. Tom Brady is a great quarterback, who seems to always win Super Bowls. But again, I think part of that goes back to the whole Robert Kraft is willing to find the right guys. Tom Brady doesn't have a salary that breaks the bank, so they can put those great or even those really good players, those specialty players that kind of know their role, the James Whites and the Wes Welkers and Julian Edelman.
Ooh, James White plug.
They're not great. Like there's nobody's going to say that Julian Edelman, Welker, and James White are going to make the Hall of Fame, but they knew their role and they did their role really, really well. And that's the thing the Packers don't have right now, partly because Aaron Rodgers is so good and eats up so much money. They need to get back to a good quarterback who's relatively cheap by quarterback standards, but field a great team around him. That's how they're going to get back to the Super Bowl and win.
I mean, that all sounds good, Corey. I mean, the other thing the Patriots had done and that the Bucs did since Brady went there was, it's like I said, they find these guys who have made a bunch of money on other teams but didn't win, and they're like, hey, come play with us for a year or two. You win a Super Bowl, right? So they get them for a little bit bigger bargain. They're like, oh, you were a problem with your last team. We don't care. You'll be motivated with us for at least 1 year, right? Because we're all working towards something you've never achieved. You've made millions of bucks, but never won the championship. So come do this with us and we'll help you get there. Right. And that works. Those guys in those teams long term wouldn't work out for 5 years or long contracts, but that's not what they're asking from them. They're like, hey, you're a talented player, a good player, sometimes great players. Like we need you to take a light contract here, but you're going to win. How's that sound? Oh yeah, I'll do it. Sure. And that's how, and the fact that they were not concerned about taking the chance on the character of those guys. I want to say double doink. Yeah. I started off the show talking about what AJ Hawk said. Exactly. AJ Hawk on Pat McAfee today confirmed a couple of those things. And again, it was that he thinks there's zero chance that Rodgers retires. So those reports are retirement, not an option for a resolution of the situation. And he also said, there's no way. He said that's total BS. The whole reports about Rodgers demanding that Goody gets fired or he won't come back. Like, no. So, and then he also said he thinks it would be pretty tough. There's a slight chance they might be able to repair the situation, but he doesn't know. So I know Browner put Rodgers going to be the quarterback for this year, and then they'll move on from him. I don't know, man. I don't know if they can fix this. I really don't. And it's like Ben and I said the other day, and Ben said it in a great way. He's like, look, if you give me Aaron Rodgers, who's like, look, I understand this is my last year. I'm going to prove it that I'm awesome. And I know I'm off this team, but I'm going to come in and kick some butt and tear up the league and win another MVP and hopefully win another Super Bowl. And then I'll go to some other team and win another Super Bowl. But he's motivated like that, then he'll take him back. But if he's Aaron Rodgers, I'm so, have so much friction with the guy, the front office and me and whatever, and I can't really dial in on that motivation to play football and I'm going to be a problem, then no, I don't want him back. What's the point of that? You got to move on then. It can't be resolved. And sometimes stuff can't. Sometimes guys need a fresh start, and that's okay. That's all right. And if that's what this has to be, is it going to suck for Matt LaFleur? Heck yeah. Is it going to suck for Packers fans? Probably. Will Goody probably lose his job in a couple of years? Most likely. But he'll deserve it. He'll deserve it. The other thing, Corey, about what you talked about, cheaper quarterback, building that great team around it, is then the Packers got to make the right decisions on guys.
Yeah.
I mean, then they got to. I think this last draft was pretty good, and by Packers standards, it was really a good draft. But by normal, NFL standards, I give it like a pretty good grade. But that's kind of the exception for them normally. And then the other thing is what other guys are they bringing in? Like what kind of free agent? I mean, they paid big money for Za'Darius, and we watched what he was like this last year. And I understand he made the Pro Bowl, but we've shown people, if you actually go back and look at play in and play out of Za'Darius Smith in 2020, he's not worth the money. He was not a Pro Bowler. Yes, he had 12 and a half sacks, but he had a lot of deficiencies, was terrible against the run, slacked off, was out of position. And that's not a guy you pay that much money to. That's a guy you pay, $7-8 million to that can make some impact plays, but then also makes a lot of mistakes. A guy that makes that much, he's got to be awesome, an anchor, impact player, and handle his responsibilities. And the Packers stuck a bunch of money in those dudes, and that's where they're at, right? So they got to, if they're going to spend money, they got to spend it on the right people, and they got to make the right decisions draft wise to build that team. And can they do it? I don't know. I don't know. I have a lot of faith in that, but so maybe it is time. And then you start over with a new GM. Goody's been with the organization for 24 years, right? So it's a long time to be with the organization. I understand he's only been in charge for a few, but maybe he's not supposed to be in charge. Maybe he was a better scout.
Maybe, I mean, he's hit on some draft picks. I mean, Jack is one of them. Rashawn Gary seems to be doing all right. Jenkins. I mean, those are all quality players right now for the Packers. I mean, we don't know about this draft yet. Obviously, we're not going to know for like another 3-4 years to see how they really panned out. But yeah, I mean, I think it was a decent draft. It got rated an A- or A by NFL Network pundits. I think it was like Charles Shaver.
Dang, wow.
Okay. It's nice to see when they draft the Badger too, especially when 10 minutes from Lambeau Field, and then
that's awesome.
And another one who's from Seymour. So I mean, that's awesome to see. Hopefully they make the team. That's another thing. But yeah, I mean, I think a lot of what the Packers do as well is, there's the Packer guy, the guy who's not going to rock the boat. He's just a good guy. He's a hard worker, nose to the grind kind of deal. But they also get a lot of guys that are good at one position, and then they try to move them to another position, or they were okay at a position and think you can be better at a different position. They try to find those versatile guys, and they don't always work out. And I think that's a lot of the problem with the Packers. They're not just drafting a guy or signing a guy. You are a cornerback. You are going to play cornerback. You're not going to play safety. You're going to play cornerback. You are an edge rusher. You're going to be an edge rusher. We're not going to put you on the D line, or you're a defensive end, but we want you to be a stand-up linebacker and these things. No, you're a run stopper. You're going to be a run stopper. That's what their job is. They don't do that a whole lot. And I think that's also part of the problem too. As part of that, they don't have the right team around the quarterback. Like they got the great quarterback. I mean, there's nobody in the league that is better than Aaron Rodgers right now. They just don't have the right pieces around him completely.
I wonder why, because they've commented on that a bunch of times, especially in these offensive linemen they're drafting. The versatility and all this sort of, and I get that. That's great. It means you can adjust your roster positions and maybe carry one less, and maybe if you're lucky enough, 2 less offensive linemen, and it helps your game day roster and all that sort of stuff by having guys that are flexible and you can plug in different spots. But it's kind of like you said, they do that with a lot of positions. And then are you, then what are you? I mean, do you really become a master of that role? Or do you end up just being pretty good at a couple of different things? And if you're pretty good at a couple of different things and you're meeting up with an excellent player that you got to face in, say, the playoffs, you can be exposed pretty quick,
Yeah.
So I wonder why that is. Like, why do they so often go? And they've talked about it. That's what they value. They talked about even the one of the reasons they went with the Josh Myers, the center from Ohio State, was partly, he's a good guy and they like that good guy, Packer good guy stuff. But also his versatility, and it's like, well, maybe a center can just be a center, and that's okay. I like that,
Well, and that thing too, if I remember correctly, in the Favre years, is the players they had they played the position they were drafted for. You weren't going to see Frank Winters playing tackle or guard. He was a center. That was his job, was to play center. I don't know if they just like the versatility or if they're like, because they just want to move guys around and see if they're at better positions. Maybe this guy's a better puller for a guard than this guy would actually be, or if he's a center, whatever it may be. Maybe it's they draft a lot of injury prone guys too, and they just need to be able to fill a spot. Because you look at that offensive line, sometimes it looks like Swiss cheese because it's just everybody is hurt all the time.
Yeah.
And I sent you and Ben a message right when Bakhtiari went down last year. And I said, Bakhtiari going down is the reason why the Packers will not win the Super Bowl. And that is what happened because the tackles got exposed.
Yeah.
And they couldn't do anything in that NFC Championship game.
Fair enough. A couple of quick points from the chat. Good to see a lot of people on chatting tonight. A lot of things we kind of talked about. One thing, Double Doink says, Cody, how you doing? He says, never get Rodgers first round help for Rodgers. And yeah, I mean, but the thing was, the offense was always productive. So that's why the Packers focused on defense. It's just they got it wrong a lot. I mean, and that's what Ben and I mentioned our last show is I asked him, I'm like, how could they get it wrong so much and these guys still have a job as the GM? If you were consistently drafting defense early picks for years and years and years and the defense wasn't getting much better, then how did those guys maintain their jobs? I didn't get it. But I did want to say with Double Doink brought this up. He's like, would it be worth giving AR a 5-year deal with shared GM player decisions? And I don't think that's what he was looking for. He's not looking. He just wants to know that his voice means a little something to him, that they might actually consider what he's saying, and especially when they have a guy on the team that is performing and showing flashes, and he thinks that guy is valuable, and then speaks out for him. Just going around cutting that guy. I mean, yeah, well, you would take that as a message. I would take that as a message, but I don't know. I mean, but that's not what he's looking for. Right at this point in his career, he was just looking for a longer commitment from the team. And I think when they weren't willing to put any more money to that to show him the commitment, because he knows they say stuff, or Gutekunst at least will say one thing and do another. He knows he can't trust what he says. And when they wouldn't do it, I think that might have been the last straw. Really, that's what I think, and it's understandable. I think the one thing that I will say too is with Gutekunst, people are talking about how he might be a good evaluator of talent since he's been with the organization 24 years, was a scout, all this sort of stuff, and they did find good players in his time there, and he's made some good draft picks. Okay, and this last draft is again some players, maybe not the players I thought at the spots, but still overall a good draft in my estimation, a lot of people's estimation. So it's not like he's terrible at that, but is he the right guy to be leading the organization? Does he have the trust of the players? Do they believe what he says? And right now I don't know that it's going to turn into any more, but if he's said these things publicly and then with the contract with Rodgers or with the situation with Rodgers, not doing, things that match what he's saying publicly, is that going to affect how the other players view him when he says stuff to them? And if you can't trust the guy in charge, I mean, you're an employee and a player, and it's a game that relies on the coaches trusting that guy and the players trusting that guy, and you can't believe what he says to your face. How's that going to work? I don't know. I think it could all fall apart for him, and the team will suffer a little bit and LaFleur will suffer. The only thing I hope is if Goody kind of gets run through here and in a couple of years is gone after Rodgers has left, that LaFleur is still intact, because I think he's got a future and I think he could be a good person to lead the team in the future.
I think the jury's still out on LaFleur. I'd like to see what he can do after Rodgers. I mean, he came into, the perfect situation. Oh, I have like quarterbacks ever. I do whatever I want. Let's see how good of a coach he really is when he has Jordan Love or some rookie coming in to be his quarterback. Let's see how good of his system is then and how much they can win. I think he's overshadowed a little bit right now just by how good his quarterback is.
That's fair, but I think he's got enough of creativity offensively. They showed with how much they ran the ball effectively in 19 that they could play more that way, right, with a lesser quarterback. But the one thing that I don't know that LaFleur has done enough of, and Ben and I have mentioned this too, is that he needs to, when there's a problem area on the team, he needs to be more involved in what's going on there. And we're hoping that with the change from Pettine, because I feel like it may tell me what you think, Corey, on this. We both kind of said, okay, Pettine was a former head coach. LaFleur comes in as a first-time head coach. Pettine's an established D coordinator. And then there was stuff clearly going on with the defense that LaFleur didn't like. And he actually spoke out about it after games and sometimes in, midweek interviews and stuff. But was he involved enough in taking charge of that and saying, hey, look, I need this to happen. I need you to clean this up, And I don't feel like he ever maybe had felt powerful enough or felt like he could do that with Mike Pettine. But now this is a new guy, a guy he's worked with before, a guy he knows. Yes, he's an experienced coach, but he's never been a head coach like that. And LaFleur's a few years in. So hopefully, if there's an issue with something that's going on, he's more on top of that and not be just worried about, I got to be the play caller and I got to do that too. Like, give that play calling duty to Nathaniel Hackett. That's fine. You got to handle this whole team. And if there's a deficiency on the team or something not going well, you got to be on that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. And I think something to also consider too is when LaFleur came in, Pettine was already here.
Yep.
Yeah. So, and they kept him around yet. So it wasn't, he came in with his own staff and the people he knew. He had to deal with the previous guys, D coordinator. So there's that little bit of, kind of working around like, okay, we'll give you must have been all right if they kept you around. They didn't keep the other guy around. Maybe not.
Plus, Mike Pettine was kind of scary. I mean, he's a little growly looking guy and always had that scowl on his face. I don't know. Once in a while, he'd crack a smile, which was really weird. But most of the time, he just looked like he was all grumpy and gruff and probably not the easiest guy to approach.
Probably not. No, I don't think so at all.
All right. I did watch the Cowherd video, and there are a couple of interesting things in there that had some validity. Of course, he had to start off with like slamming Rodgers in a bunch of personal ways, with his a bunch of conjecture. Like I think he's even said that he's never met Aaron Rodgers, and yet he talks about him all the time and hammers on his personality and all these things all the time, which he doesn't even know him, has never met him. He's also hammers on Green Bay all the time, puts down Green Bay all the time as well. If you ever listen to that guy. It's just super annoying how much he's a jerk to Rodgers and the Packers. But he did come out with his take, his hot take about the situation, and had a couple of interesting points in there. The one thing I thought was totally overblown is that he's saying like that Aaron Rodgers is sucking the life out of this franchise or some. It was very dramatic, and I was like, okay.
Well,
gave this, like, without Aaron Rodgers for a number of these years, this franchise would not have much life. So you need to settle down. It's a team. The one key thing I'll say is this, right? Aaron Rodgers has been on the team for 16 years. The Packers have been around more than 100 years.
Yep.
What's going to last? Aaron Rodgers or the Packers? It's the Packers, right? So, that's the truth of it. So no one player is going to destroy the team. He's not trying to. People are blowing a bunch of stuff out of the water in proportion here, but there is a serious problem with him in the front office, and AJ Hawk saying he doesn't know if it's going to work out.
It all depends on how much money they give him for an extension.
You really think money is? You think?
I really do.
Oh, okay.
I really do. I was talking with my buddy about this the other day. Hambone. He commented the other night.
Oh, okay, yeah.
Yeah, he. We both agree. It is about money. He wants money. He wants to be paid like the man. because he thinks he is the man. And rightfully, he's got an argument for being the man. He should get paid like it. The franchise just can't afford to pay him like that. I mean, they want to restructure and do what they can to save cap, and that's fine. I don't know that it's going to work. The only other option they have is to trade Jordan Love. Try to showcase him a little bit what he can do in preseason, or if Rodgers gets hurt or late games when they're up big, and let him play and showcase his stuff, and hopefully they can trade him. And then that way they show Aaron Rodgers, right, this is how we're committed to you. We got rid of that guy we drafted in the first round.
Well, I think the money part is more about the commitment from the team, that, he knows that the financial commitment's there, that then they're going to stick with him. And I think that's why maybe he's asking, wanting more money at the further on in this contract. But I would say, I don't know, man. I think, Denver kept things open with the way they drafted. They stayed away from quarterbacks. They kept the door open. And after June 1, if you look at how much the cap hit goes down to just 14 million, it's totally conceivable that if this doesn't change significantly, that could be an option. So
yeah, I was looking at the numbers, and I think if they traded Rodgers after June 1st, they would save like $26 million, something like that, just by trading him. If they cut him, it's only like a $17 million saving, but trading him is like 24 million, something like that. Mm-hmm. So we'll see what happens. It'll be interesting to see. I think there will be a lot of people that'll be "I told you so" people out there, and a lot of people who will just cry into their beers. That's either going to be or the other, to be honest.
Regardless, with all this stuff flying around, there's so many people that have just been slamming them too and calling them Karen and different stuff. I mean, there's just so much. I think a lot of that stems from people who didn't like him in the first place, or never really got on board with the guy. Maybe they still were old Favre lovers that never came around on him. And, the really sad part about the whole thing is that the Packers organization, and Gutekunst was there when they transitioned from Favre to Rodgers and all that all went down. And how the heck did they not learn from that situation to make this a better transition? It's amazing.
Well, part of it is that they don't have the practice of being able to do it, because they've had 2 Hall of Fame quarterbacks for the past 30 odd years. They don't have the practice in transitioning from quarterback to quarterback, except for injuries. They just don't have the practice for it.
Bruce says Denver just released one of their quarterbacks today, so maybe it's all set up. June 1, they'll move on. They'll take the only $14 million cap hit, save $22 million or whatever, and Aaron Rodgers will go play with Quinn Miners. What the hell?
Maybe. I mean, Rodgers can look at what Manning did with Denver. All he had to do was be a game manager. I mean, at that point in Manning's career, he could not throw the long ball. Not that he really ever could.
Not when they won, but remember his first year there, he set an NFL record for touchdown passes in the season. He lit him up.
Yeah, he just had to be the game manager, though. He didn't have to throw the ball deep. He just played his game. And who would not want to go, if you're a quarterback, and play in Denver when John Elway is the GM? If you're a quarterback, yeah, you want to learn from John Elway. So,
I think,
I mean, maybe that's where it's at. It's a little bit closer to the West Coast, but I don't know.
The other thing that did come out today, just to confirm before we go, the other thing that did come out today was that Kyle Shanahan was talking on Rich Eisen's show, and he said, so this was another thing that was overblown, reported, and now this was what actually happened. John Lynch never called the Packers. The 49ers never called Goody. Kyle Shanahan heard about some grumblings, called Matt LaFleur to just ask, like, say, hey, is there really a possibility here that you guys would trade him? And Matt LaFleur said, no, don't even waste your time. It's not happening. And so then he left it at that. He's like, but I did feel like, hey, if I had a chance to get Aaron Rodgers, I'm going to at least make a call and find out if it's even possible, because I didn't want to turn around and find out he was traded to some other team the next day without even me asking about it.
Oh,
And
yeah. I mean,
that's all
hit
that happened with the 49ers.
You got to ask. I mean, you can't, the Hall of Fame quarterback? Yeah, I'll ask. You have to take that chance. I mean, what if it's all, you don't take that chance, and then for some reason a trade is made where Rodgers is sent to Seattle for Russell Wilson in return. And you just get rid of Russell Wilson in Seattle, but now you got to deal with Aaron Rodgers twice a year, and you didn't pick up the phone and be like, okay, we can bring him to hometown. So.
But that's all it was. It was head coach, friend and head coach to head coach. It was nothing with the front offices and all that stuff. Just to clear that up too. Everybody was like talking about how that was whatever, much more serious than that. But John Lynch, the GM's never made any contact. So that's what we know. A lot of stuff we don't know. I hope at some point, regardless of what their resolution is, I hope they come out and talk. I think Blas had said it'd be great if the Packers and Rodgers did like a open town hall meeting or something where they could just air it all out and invite the fan base to ask questions, and that would be awesome. But we'll never get
a Maury Povich special where he opens the shit up and you are not getting traded.
Oh man. Anyway, we'll just have to hang in there, guys. Anyway, take care of yourselves. Corey, thanks for talking with me tonight, coming on and bringing that background too. So
yeah, no problem. Enjoy it.
All right. We will catch you on a regular Friday night, 9 p.m. You guys take care.